So, assalamu alaikum. Good evening and good afternoon and good morning. Is the volume sounding okay? How's the volume? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. All right, well, let's begin with the Fatiha, and then Aisha will read the translation as well.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Surah 89. By the break of dawn, by the night's 10, by the even and the odd, by the night when he passes away. Is there not in this an adjuration for those who understand? Do you not see how your Lord dealt with the people of Ad, of the city of Iram, with lofty pillars, the like of which were not produced in all the land, and with the Thamud, who cut out huge rocks in the valley? These transgressed beyond bounds in the lands, and heaped mischief upon mischief. Therefore did your Lord pour on them a scourge of different chastisements, for your Lord is on a watchtower. Now, as for humanity, when their Lord tries them, giving them honor and gifts, they say, my Lord has honored me. But when he tries them, restricting their sustenance for them, then they say, my Lord has humiliated. No, but you honor not the orphans, nor do you encourage one another to feed the poor, and you devour inheritance, all with greed, and you love wealth with inordinate love. No, when the earth is pounded to powder, and your Lord comes, and his angels row upon row, and Jahannam, that day is brought face to face. On that day will humanity remember, but how will that remembrance profit them? One will say, would that I had sent forth good deeds for my future life. For that day his chastisement will be such as none else can inflict, and his bonds will be such as none other can bind. O you soul, in complete rest, come back to your cherisher, well pleased and well pleasing. Enter then among my creatures, enter into my garden.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العظيم.
The rivers burst forth from the solid rocks, and they recede into my earth in treasure troves of mysteries. The 1/10 of knowledge from that side is apparent. What is hidden of it is 9/10. Demanded to pay my debt is myself, with the twofold of her being. And demanded of me is my vitter, wounded in the sinews. I fortified my soul inside a master city, built with collected water and fire. But no fort like it is seen with its raised elevation, fortified inside behind 7 ramparts. Her position is between lowered humility and majestic pride, putting me to work there according to the limit of my measure, until there is the inblowing into his Israfil's trumpet, heard by the ears, into images, imaged in other membrane worlds. This remains ever, the matter there living on everlastingly, until the resurrection from the graves of my thoughts. I witnessed this as a knowing and as an entity and as a state, in a vision of lights and a vision of mysteries. These sites of visible emergence became various, to me by a vision of thoughts and a vision of sights.
Thank you. Yes, we have the story that begins this chapter. Ibn Arabi says, and there's a citation of the animals who, when their upper part is eaten, provide specifically to the one who eats them a knowledge of the stars. And when the middle part is eaten, provides a knowledge of the plants. And when the rump is eaten, it is what adjoins his tail. Knowledge of the waters hidden in the earth is provided. So one recognizes when one comes to a land with no water in her, how many yards deep the water is in her. This animal is a serpent, not large and not small, found only in the environs of Silves in Western Andalusia, Portugal now. Abdullah ibn Abidun came across her when he was with me. He was the secretary of the leader of the Muslims. He cut off her head and her tail with a 2-pronged knife in a single blow, and he divided her into 3 sections. There were 3 brothers. He ate the upper part, and there was a sign about knowledge of predestination through the stars, with no studying of a book or learning from a master. And a brother ate the middle part of her, and there was a sign about knowledge of plants and the special aspects and the composition of herbs, with no studying of a book or learning from a master. His son Al-Manjaniki reported this to me in Konya. And the third brother ate the last piece, which adjoined the tail of her, and there was a sign about the extraction of waters from the interior of the earth. So glory be to the one who sets down his mysteries inside his creation. Okay. Now this is a passage which just gives us, for the entire section that we are in right now, the 114 chapters, which are searching for the source of the 114 surah of the Quran. He gives us one of these beautiful insights that helps us understand why he's writing it, how he's writing it. He said this list, so he made that list because a friend said to him, these are getting very long. Maybe if you just give us a list. And he said, I've never been so happy with that idea. This list is the entirety of what this alighting place encompasses. So there's a list of maybe 17 things. They are knowings I have alerted you to in order to lift your spirits to seek them out. So he lists these 17 so that we will have our spirits lifted and we will ourselves seek out these sources in these places. Now let us mention of them an issue, or more than one, to the measure of the spaciousness of the discussion, at the same time being concise, without being long-winded and profuse. Therefore, I say, and God speaks the truth, and who is the guide along the way? And then he says. So this first one that he then will expand on is Walayla and Ashr, by the 10. Now, one of the ways to understand these 10s is the 10 of Dhul Hijjah. So these are the days of the Hajj. And Hajj for Ibn Arabi is the iteration and the reiteration. You go frequently and repeatedly. So Hajjah is to go somewhere frequently and repeatedly. So after that, but there is no time period after. Arising from this first constraint was awakened sight of being, and he is the soul. So the first light, which is the first constraint, the pen, and then there's the soul. And he is the guarded tablet. So here the soul and the guarded tablet are in a sense the same, where everything existing in this world until the day of arisement for judgment is written down. This is God's knowing of his creation. The tablet is apart from the pen, who is the first constraint, in the basis of light and the step level of illumination. So there's the light, which has a step level of light and illumination, and then there is the tablet, the soul, which does not have illumination. He is like the green emerald on account of arousing of the particulate dust-based gem core, which is in the power of the soul. So this is the green emerald. So he is raised and sent forth from the dust-based gem core soul, and he is a light-blocking gem, no light in him, because the light is coming from Nur Muhammad. God made the step level of nature between the soul and the dust, a step level intelligible but not concrete. There is therefore nothing but commencements and endings forever from the two names of Hu, the first and the last. Based on these two truths, the commencement and the ending are continuous forever. Thus, existence is new ever. So there is no eternal remaining in the created process. There's an eternal remaining in the creative process. So what's happening here is that the soul, the tablet is elevated, is raised up, and the pen comes down and writes. Or you can, so the pen is coming down to write and the soul is coming up to be written on. So this is the process of the light blocking with no illumination, nature, soul, guarded tablet, and the pen, light, the first constraint, the Nur Muhammad, is coming down. So this is our motion right here. The page comes up to the pen to be written upon. And so that this is this motion of coming up and coming down. And the next motion that we are looking at is the splitting and cleaving, splitting. So wal-Fajr, so we have this in the poem, when the Fajr is a dawn, it breaks the night and day. It splits the night from the day, night from the day, and it bursts forth. So it's like a river bursting forth when the dam is broken. So it's got this tremendous bursting movement, which is a split. And it then corresponds to the splitting that takes place of the breath that comes from the chest and exits through the mouth. And we've looked at how each of the letters corresponds to a place in the mouth where the sound is modulated. And that corresponds to these figures like nature, tablet, the pen. And that corresponds as well to the zodiac, as we'll see. Now, when this all body came into being, shape accompanied it. So the first thing we get with this all body is the beginning of shape, as shapes are the impedimenta accompanying bodies. So bodies require shapes. The first shape emerging visibly in the body was the circle shape. So that's how we've seen the circle so many times. And it is the most excellent of shapes. And for shapes, it has the place of the aleph in the letters. So remember, the aleph can be a dot, but when looked at from the side becomes a line, but when looked at another way becomes the equator, the great circle, and when looked at another way becomes the sphere. So that's how the aleph is a circle, a sphere, and so sphere, circle, line, point, nukta. It flows universally in the entirety of shapes, just as the letter aleph flows universally in the entirety of letters. So this is why all the shapes that we see around us and in us are circular. All of them return, all of them come as a circle. So now we're getting the imagery of circling, that all of these images are coming back as circles. Everything inside me, myself, and everything around me is moving in a circle. And so the aleph is a circle which is inside every letter. And it flows universally in the entirety of letters, both as a script and as a spoken word, by the passing through of air from the inner chest over the exit positions of the mouth. So you get teeth, palate, tongue, all of these positions modulate the hu that's coming from the chest and coming out until it goes across the two lips. And so this is very much that the body and the mouth, how it modulates the hu into past the two lips. This is creation. And these are the words of Allah, which are never exhausted. And when a word leaves the two lips, it's a wave, a sound wave. And a sound wave can lose energy, but it can never stop. So a sound wave continues forever. And it cannot be stopped and it can't be analyzed, that is cut up. Analytica, it can't be cut up into sections. Because if you cut a wave, it's no longer a wave. And in this passage, this is something I'm still kind of trying to figure out. As the Arabs whom we encountered, among those who preserved their language without alteration, like the Banu Fahm, in fact, I saw them congealing the qaf. And so I do not know whence there came into our friends in the Western lands an abandonment of her congealment in the Quran. So when I was studying Arabic in Bryn Mawr College with Dr. David Rabia, and the other student was the daughter of a mayor of a major Saudi city, we were the only two students. And the only time we could meet was before 7 o'clock in the morning, before regular classes met. So I would walk across the campus and practice qaf, 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 which is the unvoiced Yuluvar qaf. And now I'm finding out from Ibn Arabi, of course, that is not the original pronunciation of Quran, that the original pronunciation is a voiced qaf. So instead of qaf, it's qaf, qaf. It's a voiced sound. And of course, this is the way the people of the Maldives today even pronounce the Q, the qaf, they pronounce qaf with a voiced Q. And the Berbers and many others pronounce in this way. And so this has been quite shocking to find out that the unvoiced qaf is not the original Arab sound. So, now this circling going around and around, there's a great circle, which Ibn Arabi will talk about here. And this great circle is when things happen. And this corresponds to the pointing in the surah of, do you not see how? So do you not see the history? So we are asked in the Surat al-Fajr to look at history, to see what has happened in this great circle. So Ibn Arabi writes, the orbit of celestial bodies, meaning the orbit of the mansions, is a cut in the Atlas orbit. So there is an Atlas orbit, and Atlas means effaced. So Atlasa means effaced. So this is a background-free orbit. It's a place that has no notch. Remember, a circle, you have a beginning and an end only when you make a notch in the circle. Well, this Atlas has no mark. It has no beginning or end. It has nothing in there to orient yourself. And so it's a background-free orbit, making the zodiac, and it makes the zodiac orbit. And from there, you get a zodiac orbit, which has the 12 cuts that say this is where you are on the circle. And he made for each measured range in the zodiac orbit 2 alighting places or 3. So for every orbit, there are 2 or 3 star forms that you need to look for, 2 or 3. And there are 28 then. So each of the mansions and the entirety of its celestial bodies are swimming in their orbits. So the word in Arabic for orbiting is swimming, with a slowness the sight cannot perceive, except after thousands of years. It is just as it is said about the pyramids in Egypt, that they were built when Altair was in Leo, and today it is in Capricorn, and we are in the year 634. Then he brought into being, flush against the surface of the celestial orbit. So here's an orbit which is 3-dimensional, but there's a surface of it, and flush against this orbit is the garden, with what is in her by the rising of Altair, and it is the stable watchtower. And this is why the garden has perpetuity. Okay. So I wrote to someone who does these celestial calculations, and he said there's not enough information to be able to say what year that that Nasr was in, or Altair was in Nasr, was in Leo. But it's this cycle that he's talking about is 26 or 28,000, 26,000 years. So somewhere in 26,000 years, like half, that's how far back this kind of thing is going. And then you begin to realize that for Ibn Arabi and for us, the pyramids of Egypt are almost equally distant. They're just ancient history for him as well as for us. But he's showing us that in this grand circle, in this great circle, all of these things are happening. So the question is, can you see the history, that what's happening with this turn, and that things are tremendously ancient? Okay.
Nimrod and Shuddad came and went. They drank the wine of death. Many caravans arrived and moved on. For whom did the world wait? Be certain death must come. One day you will be taken. Possessions will be left to others. For whom did the world wait? This world is a workshop, a fantastic ruin. To be proud is crazy. For whom did the world wait? Ashki, beware of greed. Death is closer to you than yourself. The goal is to please the truth. For whom did the world wait?
Beautiful. Thank you. Now we've looked at circles, we've looked at splitting, and we've looked at the grand circle, which has all of this time and all of these movements and passings. And so the story Ibn Arabi tells is, I guess, Dhul al-Nun, I think, is the one, or someone goes into a palace and just puts down his backpack and starts to take a rest there. And the guards all come up into the palace and say, Howard, what are you here for? This is a great palace, and you're lying down and trying to go to sleep. And so he says, the fakir says, so whose palace is this? And he says, well, it's my father's palace. And then said, so where is your father? Said, oh, he passed away. And then who had it before your father? Oh, his father, my grandfather had it. And where's he? Oh, he's passed away. And so he says, look, this is a caravanserai. Everyone here is just passing away. So I have a right to lie down here as well as anyone else. And so this is this movement of this circle. And it's where this idea of history comes, and that we need to learn from what's come before. And now we'll look at this very interesting imagery of markaz. And markaz is like a center, but it's the spear that is fixed to the ground. So the first brought into being is the earth, and she is the endpoint of the vacuum. So there's brought into being and an endpoint of a vacuum. So there's no space that within all this taking place. The earth and the vacuum is itself space. It creates its own space. And so Ibn Arabi is telling us here, there is no outside space, which is like a Cartesian grid to place events. All the events make their own space as they come in. And this is the farthermost of the coarse and light blocking things. And it is the alighting place, descending on and on to the now continuously. So light and then the most light blocking, that this process makes its own space. It's where reality is. It's where the world is. And the vacuum has no endpoint. In fact, it has no endpoint because it's always stretching. Wherever it stretches, it makes its own space. In fact, it is an imagined space stretched out, not something which is a physical body. So it's not a physical body that gets filled up by all of this creation. And the world, all of him, bound all together, is in a lighting place, ever seeking the center. And this search is a search for the definite. So you're searching for something. The world's center, where the spear is fixed to the ground, is the one where his command is fixed and settled. After this, if you got to the center, there would be no more searching. But no more searching does not exist. Therefore, the world's alighting descent, in order to search, is forever, continually reiterating. This is expressed as searching for the true. So we're ever searching for the true. If you think about the earth and orbits, so orbits are falling, they're falling down, and because they're going fast enough, they don't fall into the earth, into the center, but they follow around it and around it. So we're forever falling into the center, but never reaching the center. That's the search for the true. So the true is the one sought. Leaving an impression in you, this search is the radiant brilliance which reaches you, passionately in love with you. So this search for the center, this move towards the center, creates a tajalli, a radiant brilliance in us, which leaves a mark on us. And that mark on us is passionate and it's love. You can see when you read that scar, that it's a scar of love, because you are coming closer and closer to the center. You're always moving towards the center, but never reaching the center. So who is seeking you with a movement based on passionate love? So who is rising up to meet you and you're falling down to meet who? And every time that happens, you don't go to the center, you then orbit around. The who rises again, you fall again, and then this happens. So this is how the movement of everything is the movement of love. It's the movement of seeking the center and never reaching the center.
These nightingale, stranger to space and time, as slowly from the garden of purest mind, that I brought is simply the friend. Oh, divine face, gazing, gazing, this that song. Because more beautiful as longing grows deeper and deeper, dervish singing in the custom. Nothing surpasses it, passionate love. This bold lover questions the source of being. Waters of flies into the veil of creation. Though the light of supplication can flash on my heart to others. Only Allah, being beyond being. Shining, shining, glow, you're shining. This dervish is not complete. Nothing surpasses passionate love. Nothing surpasses passionate love.
So the sphere in the center is the place that we're all searching for and coming to see and to be with and to move towards the center. And then that center is flashing these tajalliyat, these brilliant radiances, this shining, shiniest, glowing, shining, flashing at us. And then we are then impressed and marked by that. And that mark, which is what we see, is that we know where we're seeking and why we're seeking. And we don't get there, because to get there, this whole thing would end. So love is you never get there. And so the completeness is to know that you will never get there, but this is why we are here. And in Arabic, the ishq, or passionate love, is from ashaqa, which is the labla being, which is a hyacinth being. And so it's the idea of coming up and whirling up and up and up. So there are 4 names of love. The first one is seed, muhabbat, so habba. And so the seed of love grows. And when the seed of love grows, it grows into this upwardly spiraling plant. And that's called ishq, or ashaqa, or I should pronounce it in the original way, ishq, ishq. And so rising up and up and up. And then the third one is hawa, which is downdraft, falling in love. Falling in love. So we have the seed. When it grows, it spirals up, and then we fall in love. We fall down in love. And then the fourth is wad, the 10th state, wudud, which is a stable love, which is the complete love. When you know that you are stable, that you are moving around the center in this way. And as you know that you are stable, you're not flying off of orbit, and you're not crashing into the center. You're neither crashing in the center or flying off your orbit. You are orbiting. And so that orbiting is wudud, the fourth kind of love. So it is this way with all of the ever-moving things. So everything is moving, and they're all moving towards their center, towards the source. In fact, their agitated movement is one of love and passion. Nothing but this is true. So they are passionately moving towards the center, to where they come from. And who does not passionately yearn for this tajalli, when the radiant brilliance is described as being beautiful? So this particular tajalli of searching and circling the one is described as beautiful. It is the beautiful. And beauty is love for itself. The beautiful is passionately desired for itself. And if not for who, radiating brilliantly in an image of the beautiful, the universe would not emerge manifest. So if this beauty did not emerge, then the creation would not be there. Therefore, the exit of the world from the void into being is by means of this passion. And the state continually reiterates. So the movement of the universe is perpetual, she having no end. There's always this movement, and this is the movement of passionate love. And if there were a matter he would end up called the center, the endpoint would be there. The universe would be still, and movement would be nullified. So if there were a center that you could get to, then everything would be still, and movement would be nullified. Then the extended hand of help would be nullified. So here we get the word madet and imdad, and the ink well. The ink well is here. The pen dips in the ink well and extends that ink and writes on the paper. So the inkwell is here, the pen dips in it, the page rises up, and the pen descends and writes. So one more time, the center is the inkwell. The pen dips in the center. The pen has the paper rise upwards, and the pen descends downwards to write. So the rising up is passionate love, and the descending is hawa, is the falling in love. So the inkwell at the center, the page rises up in passionate love, the pen descends in falling in love and writes. And what is written is us. But the matter is different. So there is no stopping all of this. No, the people and most of the creation are unaware of the movement of the universe because he is ever moving them all. So there remains the arrangement of what is witnessed, such as distance and nearness in their own states. So we see things that are far apart and things that are near, and we think that, well, nothing is getting closer or farther, so therefore there must not be any movement. But that's not true. The movement is, we could say, internal movement or in another dimension. So because of their witnessing, so they imagine that the earth is still turning around the center axis. So most people, he says, in his time, believe that the earth is moving around its central axis and that is, there's nothing else but that. And Ibn Arabi is saying, no, everything is moving around its center axis. And remember, we had a point of origin and a line of origin and the shish kebab of life. All the points, all the places on this line of origin, on the shish kebab of life, have as their center, which they are turning around and around, the center. Okay. And so just to give you that one more time to remember. So the inkwell, the page rises up in passionate yearning because passionate love is a rising, ishq. And the pen falls down and falls in love to the page and then writes. And so that rising up and falling down is a process of love. And so these moving iterations are the extended hand of help. So we can look at beads, we can look at footprints and imprints. So if we look at beads, tasbih, rosaries, the beads are coming towards us. And so they rise up towards us, and then we count and it goes down. So the page rises up and the pen falls down in love. The page rises up, the pen falls down in love. The bead comes up and then the bead goes down. And so this movement of coming up in passionate yearning and then falling in love and coming down. This is the movement of the circle that's coming, always coming in, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And each one of this circle is circling and orbiting its center. And its center will never be reached. So just as the body in orbit will never crash into the earth or fly off, it is always attracted and pulled towards the center, but never reaches the center, and therefore always stays in orbit. Footprints. The other imagery is footprints, that when Ibn Arabi is talking about footprints, that you don't step anywhere that your prophet has not stepped. He doesn't say that you'll see the prophet walking in front of you. You'll see the prophet's footprints in front of you. And the footprints are coming at you, and you put your foot there. The next one comes at you and you put your foot there. So the footprint is coming towards you and you're putting, in falling in love, your foot down on the same place. The footprint rises to you and you fall in love. The footprint rises to you and you fall in love. So this is the process of the beads of tasbih. It's a process of following the footprints, the footsteps of your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the imprint is where this is imprinted. And so the imprint is a valley. And so you scoop the valley, and then the valley comes and you scoop that one, and it splits and you make the next one and the next one and the next one. And so when this process is complete, when you know that this is how things are, and you're complete because you're not crashing towards the center and you're not flying off of your orbit, you have complete rest and complete satisfaction.
O Muhammad, first light of eternity. O Ali, whirling lion of Allah. O Hassan, beauty of the lovers of beauty. O Hussein, mystic moon of Islam. O bright pearl of truth, living essence of paradise, enlightened lady Lady Fatima. Oh, bright pearl of truth, living essence of paradise, enlightened Lady Fatima. Medet, Medet, helper of those who seek mystic union, Ya Rasul Allah Medet. Medet, Medet, you who unveil the unity of being, Ya Habib Allah Medet. The secret of the path is yours, the way to blessed extinction, the truth of pristine consciousness. The secret of the path is yours, the way to blessed extinction, the truth of pristine consciousness. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah. Help us and lift us up, unveil, awaken us, refine, illumine us, O Habib Allah. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah. Help us and lift us up, exalt and empty us, absorb and consume us, O Habib Allah. Medet, 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 Ya Rasulallah.
Thank you. So we are the page that rises up, and the ink well is there in the center. And here comes the pen. Here comes the light of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So when we say Medet, we say, take the ink from the inkwell and draw on us, write on us, impress us with the pen, mark us. And so that process of Medet, asking for the extended hand, is the same word as the ink that's being stretched from the inkwell into the page. And so this is what we call for when we say Medet, and that's what we call for when each bead comes down. It rises and descends, rises and descends. So alhamdulillah, thank you, wonderful.
Medet. Let's see. Okay. I want to have the extremes of your love. See how silly am I, wishing for unachievable. Iqbal.
Yeah. So that's Ibn Arabi's statement that that love never gets to where it's going to. What is sought out is never reached, and so it's always elusive. It's always eluding. It's always moving, and so what you love is not even the center. You love the loving. You love the motion. And so these are waves that are coming to us, and they cannot be stopped. You cannot analyze or cut up a wave, or then it's no longer a wave. So these streaming waves and emotions, there's motions, all of these are coming forth. And what you then are loving is not the place that you want to arrive at or the place that you're leaving, you're loving the loving. You're loving the waves that are coming towards you.
Trying to fathom, there is no more searching. Could it be in context of creation as creation goes on for love?
Right. So the idea that there could be no more searching is impossible. There's always searching. Everything is going towards its center, which is the center. And so there is no, I'm going to stop now and become still. There is no stillness in this one. And so in a sense, there is nothing but gerunds, INGs, as Richard was talking about a little while ago to me, that everything is a moving, a dynamic. And there are no places that say, now I'm done, or this is what I want, and now I have it.
The movement around the center can get us closer to the center, but closeness here is not distance. Closeness is recognizing our relationship to the center, which is a progress without end.
Right. Yeah. And Ibn Arabi will look at that. He looks at there's a topological description of how two distances, the distance of A to B can be not the same as the distance from B to A. And he's saying this is the situation, that Allah's distance to everything in creation is exactly the same. Our experience of it is that there are ones who are very close to God and ones who are very far away. But that's our experience of it, because the distance from the center, Allah, Haqq, to everything in creation is exactly the same. And the realization of that is every breath is a path to Allah, is the recognition that no matter how far away I might feel, that there is only one step to Allah. And therefore, every step every breath is a path to Allah.
So is the crux the relationship?
So we are like satellite orbiting, that kind of thing. That is the relationship. As we don't have any reality on our own. And this one here, what's loving is to bring us into orbit and to bring us around and to bring us close, which is our recognition of closeness, but can't be physically close because there is no going to the center. There's always the never reaching the center. And so never reaching the center. So it's the relationship. So we want to know, so Madet and the ink is the connection that draws from the inkwell to the writing on the page. And we are the writing on the page made by the pen, the light of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we are the pen that the pen will fall down in love with us, and we rise up in love for the pen. And then this writing is the relationship between the ink on the page and the ink in the inkwell. So the inkwell never dries, never ends, never is exhausted, and the words will never be exhausted. And so the relationship between the inkwell and the writing is what counts. And we want to, on the mystic path, we often think, oh, we should go towards the ink well, and we should sort of we don't think that the writing is that important, but that's not the case. The writing is the most important. The reason we are loved is because we are writing. We are a writing.
You mentioned 4 words were love. Ishq was the first, Wadud was the fourth. What was the second and third?
Yeah, we might have to have that one. I think we did that in Crestone one time. So the first is Muhabbat, and that's from Hub, H-A-B-B, which is seed. So that's the seed of love. And we have Ilahis that talk about planting the seed of love, and then it grows into a great tree. What it grows into is Ishq. And Ishq is the hyacinth being that twirls and swirls upwards. So when you have the light-headed swirling upwards, I'm in love, and just everything is light and movement and spiraling and dizziness, that's the second love, Ishq love. And then the third one is Hawa love, which is a downdraft. And that's what we talk about, falling in love. And this is also the pestle and the mortar. So the pestle and the mortar, that's related to Hawa as well. And so this third kind of love is when you're pounded. So when you're pounded and pounded and pounded, that is the third kind. And then the fourth is Wadud, which is based on Wad, which is the tent peg. And so this is the tent peg that holds the tent. So when the when the wind blows, the tent will luff upwards, but won't fall out and won't go completely crazy. It will luff upwards. And then when the wind has a downdraft and falls down and pounds, it will pound and go down, but it won't be flattened out. So the wudud is where we want to be, so that we can have the upward love, the passionate love, without going so crazy that we leave the orbit. And nor do we want the kind of downdraft that pounds us so much that we're pulverized and we have nothing there. So we want the love which allows the tent, our body to rise and to fall gently without going to leaving the orbit or being pounded into dust.
Ilahi 29a, there's a quote, waves on Allah's ocean rising and falling create earth and heaven in the storm of my existence.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ariam. Yeah, this, you might have noticed, the very astute observer will see that that slide was the slide which I described, Dream 3, and we'll talk about that. That's the image of waves. And so waves, these waves were frozen, and then there was going to be a splitting dawn, a bursting dawn. And when the dawn bursts forth, that wave would rise and then carry all the way to the shore. So this waves, and we talk about emotions as coming in waves. So this is the feeling, is the waves that are washing over you. And as these waves wash over you, they're reiterations. They're coming at you one after the other.
Would a quality of the perfect human being that Ibn Arabi describes be the realization of eternal orbiting?
Yeah, I think that, so that's the completeness, is to know where you are and know that you are orbiting for a reason, and you're orbiting and that you are not going to disappear and fall out of orbit into the earth and crash, nor are you going to fly off into somewhere where there isn't this beautiful orbit of proximity and closeness to the divine. So the understanding of that is this completion. And we had that in the Ilahi, that's complete love. So complete love, we think is, oh, I'll become perfect and then I'll be complete. And it's not that at all. It's complete means to know that I am the paper upon which the pen writes, and the pen gets its ink from this inkwell.
You mentioned that there is only one breath, one step to Allah. How to take that one step to Allah?
What the Ilahi does for us is it tells us not to despair. And this is a very long and strong message throughout the sacred texts and throughout Islamic sacred texts, that do not despair. And so despair is what we create in ourselves. And when Ibn Arabi says about the fire, when the hellfire and the burning of fire, he says it happens now. And what's happening now in the hellfire is that there's no one torturing you, there's no one tormenting you except your own anxieties and your own thoughts. And so that, to have my own anxieties are the ones that are tormenting me. To be relieved of those is not to change anything, because there's nothing out there concrete doing that to me. It's to change what's inside. And so, and despair is in a way the description of thinking that I have no access because there's too many obstacles in front of me. And the answer, there are no obstacles in front of you. And as soon as you are turned to, you turn, and that turning, and that's tawbah. So Allah turns to you, off turning, and I turn, and that turning, and that's astaghfirullah as well. As when Allah turns, I turn, and then back into realizing that I'm in this orbit. Whereas if I don't know that, I'm still equidistant with every other part of creation from Allah. But if I feel that I'm flying off the orbit, then I'm flying off into despair. So the answer is that the A to B is not the same as B to A. So if I can realize that from B to A is the measure of Allah's A to B, Allah to me, if I can know that, then I'll know that there is only one distance, and I'm that distant from Allah. And to think, and so that this B to A, I experience it as, well, now I'm close to God, now I'm far away from God. And astaghfirullah is to say, no, you're not far away from God.
But in a sense, one has to step aside and let all this develop, happen, for he, she remains alone.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that's why the Tauba, so in English and in others in English language places, the idea of repentance. Well, Tauba is turning, not repentance. And turning is something that Allah does first. So yes, it is. And so that is the patience. And then the Madad is asking for help. I do not have the ability to turn myself. And I do not have the ability to adjust my orbit so I don't crash in the middle or fly off the orbit. The only adjusting of the orbit can be done from the center. So asking for the center, waiting for the center, knowing that it is up to the center to turn to me so that I can then turn my orbit. This in a sense tells us that this search is the one that comes. Now we're told that in practical matters, there are things that you can do. But when it comes down to it, when I do something good, it's because I have been given the kind mercy to know that that is something I can do, which is good. So in Ibn Arabi's world, it always comes back to the center, and the center is always turning towards you and bringing you back towards this connection.
Being on the orbit path seems somehow to resolve opposites, not reaching the center or flying off the circuiting.
Yeah, and the other, when we were doing the tasbih, the coming up and the descending, if you think about a sphere and you're standing on a sphere and you're walking, when you're walking from the North Pole to the equator, it feels like you're going down. But if I'm walking over here, it feels like I'm coming up. And so it's the same movement. One is experienced as up and one is experienced as down. And so Ibn Arabi says that tells the story that the four angels have come to the Kaaba and they ask each other, where have you come from? And the one says, I've come from deep inside the earth. The other says, I've come from high above. The other says, I've come from east. The other says, I've come from west. And they have all come from God's side. And so that's how on a sphere, no matter what direction you go, you'll end up back where you started. And so you might feel I'm going down, I'm going up, but all these great circles end up in the same place.
Does Ibn Arabi speak of illumination as a goal as some other spiritual paths do?
So the illumination is you and I, Ibn Arabi tells us, we are not illumined. We're the green emerald. So we're the green emerald which the light of Muhammad illuminates. So our greatest desire is to be a green emerald, which is pure and which allows all of the light from the light of Muhammad to reach us, and then we glow with the light of Muhammad. So our goal is never for ourselves to have any kind of source of light. It's to be lit up and to be illumined by the light of Muhammad, and to always remain a paper that has the pen writing on. So the paper doesn't stand up and say, I want to be the pen, or I want to be the writer. The page says, is the Ard al-Anitha, which is the feminine earth, which is the tablet, which says, I am the greatest that I can be is to be the one who receives the light of Muhammad and receives the pen.
Baki suggests we pray for those in despair. We may have been there at times.
Yeah, and despair is the big one, and that is the theme of what happens when we say I am so far away, and we then don't even say astaghfirullah, and we don't even look for what can I do to bring myself back, and so this is. That you just sat back. It is not within me to do this, if you think about so if all of these tortures and torments are from anxieties, which are all self-produced. So if they're self-produced, then how do they stop? And then that's why when I first came across this and understood it, it was the idea of faith or iman. So faith is knowing that Allah is merciful and kind, and not having faith is not knowing that. So if I am in wave after wave of anxieties and despair, the only thing that gets me out of that is that I have faith that this will pass, this will end, that Allah is ultimately and will give me kind mercy. And Ibn Arabi says, this is the message throughout the Futuhat. Ibn Arabi says, this is the message that Allah, kind mercy will outstrip wrath, and then also, which means then the torment that I make in myself.
Is this journey of getting closer and closer only during this lifetime? What makes this life special or different from before birth or after death?
Yeah, no, this is the forever. This is the moment that we were taking out of the void. We began this circular motion, and the first place we came to at the circular motion was, am I not your cherisher? And we say yes. And then the second place we come to is Ar-Rahman, which is the throne of kind mercy, that is the cosmos. And then the third place is the footstool. And then all of the zodiacs, as we looked at, all of the celestial bodies are also these other steps along the way. And then, so then the first thing that splits our ear is, am I not your cherisher? That splits our ear. And so we talked about splitting was the other theme in this, from this surah. The place where it goes to, so splitting, so the ear splits, and then we are entering into the womb, and then the womb splits as a channel, and we exit the womb, and then we come into a grave, which is the second womb, and then that grave splits, and we exit the second womb, the grave, and then we are. Then it keeps going. So all of everything that happens to us is this splitting. So these are words. And so the one sound, the one breath comes from the chest and then goes out after being modulated by the mouth, goes out and never ends. And so it's highly differentiated. So this one sound, one breath modulates and then leaves, exits with no end. And that modulation is our splittings. These are all, and the splitting of the two lips, the splitting of all of this, all of the imageries that we have of splitting, that creation is by splitting, and then by splitting and by splitting. And that never ends.
And may this class never end. Thank you so much, Shuaib, and thank you everyone with your wonderful questions.
I've got one more here that's coming privately, and I'll go ahead and I'll, instead of reading it, I'll maybe answer if I look at it. So and this is the word of, we talked about torment and anguish and all of that, and that torment in Arabic is adab, and adab is linguistically udhab, which is sweet water, and isti'adab is that they will taste sweet water. So Ibn Arabi is saying that whenever we are in torment, that torment is changing just the way the word itself holds two meanings. The word itself holds torment and sweet water in the same word. And so anguish and anxiety turns, and then the other facet, which is the sweet water, emerges. So that's telling us that there's not an outside force which makes things merciful for us. It's all something inside, and it all turns inside. And this turning inside is when we see where we are orbiting, and we see that we have not left the orbit. When we see that, what had been tormenting and anxiety producing turns, and suddenly is the sweet water. And so this is how Ibn Arabi says that the mercy and the kindness, the rahmah of Allah will pervade everywhere, and that rahmah is a horse that's very slow. And so in the horse race, it's a very slow horse. However, she has a very large chest, and so she has a great breath. So as we're watching the horse race proceed, we're seeing wrath and all of the vengeful names. Their horseback riders are very fast, and they look like they're going to definitely win this race. But Rahma is riding on a horse with a large chest, and she will eventually get closer and closer and closer. And then when she outstrips, which means she takes the spear, which is in the ground. So in a horse race, you put a spear in the ground and you say, race towards that. Whoever can grab that spear it's in the ground will win. So Rahma comes up from behind, takes the spear, and Ibn Arabi says that spear is humanity, and says, I've got you. And that's the extended hand of assistance. Rahma says, I've got you. And then that Rahma then has outstripped wrath and all of the vengeful names. So alhamdulillah, it all works out.
Omar has a quick question.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit difficult to write it. You mentioned the footstep of the Prophet, that the footsteps of the Prophet come up and you step on it. So here we're talking about the movement of the tablet and the pen, but you're actually playing the role of the pen rather than the tablet, right? And in the learning process, in our moving forward in this learning process, when do we know if we are the tablet or the pen? In other words, when do we know if we should wait for the footstep to come to us, or if we should look for it and actively make that movement? When do we know when to move, when to wait?
Beautiful. Oh, I think that's the description of the path. Finding out when we move and when we don't. But that's so beautiful. Yes, that is up and down, the rising up and falling in love. So in one sense, we have Haqq rises up and then we fall in love. But in the other sense, Haqq is the one that falls in love after we've risen up. And then we have pen in the tablet as well. And then the footprints, the footsteps which are coming towards us, and we're stepping on them. And then the tasbih. So I think these are all the practices that we do. And then as we do that in true Ibn Arabi form, we'll see that we're not sure who is who. And that'll be a good thing. And we won't know who is who, but so as we are doing tasbih, Allah says, I hear the one who does my praise. And then Allah is praised. And so is Allah being praised, or is Allah ising praise? And so there we go. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Omar. Okay. So good to see everyone. Stay warm, and may we all get warmer and warmer in this trying times. And then remember that for every affliction, there are 3 blessings. And as Omar said, that the companion Omar said, when the affliction hits me, the first thing I think is, it hasn't ruined my religion. So it didn't make me despair. That's a good thing. That's a blessing. The second thing is, I know it could be worse. It could have been worse. And we have a bunch of great stories about that. It could have been worse. So that's also, you're thankful and you say it's a blessing that it could have been worse. And 3, I will be recompensed for it. And so that recompense is that you will put forward into your future life, as the Surat al-Fajr, we read that. What can I wish I could put forward into my future life something. Well, every affliction, if it's treated and said, this is an affliction which contains a blessing, that blessing is that I am putting forward in my life what will be good for me in my next part of my life. So alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So, okay. Take care, everyone.